Whenever you're ready to begin.
As Barbara Killer, author of the 1990 novel Energy Alternatives, suggests, with our modern lifestyles, people depend on unlimited energy to power their everyday lives. And where do we get this energy from? We obtain 80% of our worldwide energy demand currently from the burning of fossil fuels and the combustion of fossil fuels. And by fossil fuels, I'm referring to coal, oil, and natural gas. However, when you think of how fossil fuels were formed, we think back to the dinosaurs. Over millions of years, dinosaurs, plants, and animal life died and fell to our oceans and our bottom of our caves and environmental systems. And over millions of years, through the effects of large temperatures and pressures, they were slowly converted to the coal, oil, and natural gas that we use today. In other words, these resources were formed under highly specialized conditions, and currently we have a reliance upon a commodity that we cannot replace. Experts agree that our fossil fuel supplies will be exhausted in a finite period of time. And according to greenaction.org, the burning of fossil fuels contributes to global warming, creates acid rain, pollutes our air, befouls our beaches, kills wildlife, and threatens the economic survival of whole communities. Therefore, I propose that there is only one logical solution that we can follow in order to eventually replace the fossil fuel dependency that we have. And this is to develop natural, renewable energy supplies. And by this, I mean the obtainment of energy from solar, wind, and the harnessing of water power. We are all affected by this because we all take these everyday conveniences for granted. We wake up in the morning to our electric alarm clocks. We maze our way into the bathroom and brush our teeth with our electric toothbrush and maybe use an electric razor. We walk into our kitchen and we take food out of the refrigerator and then throw it into our ovens. When we leave the house, we get into our cars and our automobiles, and we assume that they're going to get us to our work, and that when we get there, the buildings will be air conditioned and we'll have lights. However, we do take this availability of energy for granted because of our current situation and the fact that fossil fuels have always been readily available until recent years. I would like to argue, as a chemical engineering student at Florida State who is very aware of the energy needs that we face, that renewable alternative energy sources are potentially our only solution to eventual depletion of our fossil fuel supplies, and that they will alleviate the social, the economical, political, and societal issues which arise from the combustion of fossil fuels. Now that I've presented an overview of what I hope to convince you of, let me first begin by explaining the societal and environmental issues which arise from the use of fossil fuels. To begin with, fossil fuels contribute a direct societal problem in that they contribute social, economical, and political problems in the following ways. When you burn fossil fuels, they emit large fumes of toxic gases to our environment, and also they're transported over our oceans. As we speak, trillions of barrels of oil are transported over our oceans. Oil companies claim that there's little risk of these oil supplies and tankers possibly being released to the environment, but Exxon Valdez oil spills and other natural situations which have arisen in recent years have led us to realize that this is a problem that we face. Before 1973 in the world, there was little concern for the replacement of fossil fuel or a dependency upon it, because for thousands of years humans have used these fossil fuel supplies with little use or little anticipation of their running out. However, in 1973, as many of you may know, OPEC, an oil company which had a monopoly on our supply, decided to double its prices for United States oil. And this led to a large oil supply and first led us to realize that we cannot continue to depend on a supply, a commodity which was made in such a specialized way and which is being rapidly depleted. Before this OPEC oil shortage led us to first realize the issues. According to James L. Winbrick, author of Alternative Energy, Assessment and Implementation Reference Book, written in 2004, fossil fuel combustion is responsible for approximately 80% of all greenhouse gas emissions in the United States, almost all carbon monoxide, and 80% of all greenhouse gas emissions, almost all carbon monoxide and oxides of nitrogen emissions, about 60% of all emissions of volatile organic compounds, and about 90% of all sulfur dioxide emissions. For those of you that haven't taken organic chemistry or a chemistry class here, basically this is just saying that we have a lot of nasty chemical and organic compounds that shouldn't be in our environment, which are released on a regular basis from the use of fossil fuels. According to Zachary A. Smith and Katrina Taylor, author of Renewable and Alternative Energy Sources, the history of energy policy in the United States and the world reflects not only a lack of planning for energy needs on the part of federal and state governments, but also a perception of energy as plentiful. Therefore, before the conflict which arose in 1973, we didn't even have a worldwide realization or a widespread movement to develop these resources. We will all be affected when the resources we require to power the comforts we demand are gone. Therefore, now that I've presented the fact that there is a need to replace our fossil fuels and move away from our dependency on them, I'd like to present a potential solution, and that is the development of renewable alternative energy sources. And by this, I specifically mean the development of the harnessing of our sun, wind, and solar power, or water power. So money and time need to be invested into the further development of these sources. As of now, as I mentioned, 87% of our worldwide demand is obtained from renewable sources, or from the combustion of fossil fuels. Well, currently only 2% of our worldwide demand is obtained from renewable sources. This is a staggering statistic. We don't have the efficiency or the technology as of yet to use wind, solar, and water power to power our world. However, this is not a reason to continue developing. Because many people point to the fact that we don't have this ability to actually replace fossil fuels currently with renewable sources as a reason not to actually pursue them. However, this is only going to lead to a continued development or continued reliance on an already limited resource. Because if we continue to rely on the fact that we have always had fossil fuels and say that, okay, well, it hasn't been a problem up until now, and we'll actually have fossil fuels for several hundred years, so we shouldn't worry about it. And we'll be placing a burden upon our future generations of people, and possibly presenting them with a world which has not allowed them the commodities that we have been allowed. So we need to invest time into developing these technologies. Now, if we do, we could have, instead of a world where we plunder our oil supplies and we dig into natural supplies and damage our environment and also release natural or pollutants into our environment, we could come up with a world where we use our space to develop large solar and large wind plants, and where we use only the free fuels that are supplied by our environment. Energy availability and cost of living worldwide could decrease. There are wars that are fought over oil, and societal problems that risk. And the fact that OPEC has had a monopoly in 1973 and was able to place the United States in such a serious situation shows you that the use of fossil fuels creates large industries where the power is placed into the few hands. So if we were to move into a world where we use renewable energy sources, all of these societal, political, and economical situations could be addressed. In the past, where alternative energy sources have been developed and greater time has been developed, greater resources or tremendous results have been observed. According to Paula Berenstein, author of Alternative Energy, Facts, Statistics, and Issues, written in 2001, Washington State, which is rich in water power, contributed to 30% of the United States hydroelectric power in 1997. Many of us are aware that in California's Silicon Valley, solar, wind, and geothermal sources and lots of alternative technology abound. In 1997, 94%, 98%, and 97% of the United States utility-based electricity was produced. Developments like this suggest that great gains can be made if the necessary investments of time and money are made. Many object that because we don't have the ability to supply our current needs or we're not even close to being able to supply our current needs with alternative energy sources, that their further development is impractical. However, I urge you to realize that we do have a finite supply of the source that we obtain nearly all of our energy from now. So eventually, if we don't make the decision, future humans will have to make the decision to replace an already limited and irreplaceable resource. Many object that nuclear power will present a better solution to our future needs. However, as many of you know, nuclear power presents a potentially very devastating catastrophe of unimaginable proportions. In 1987, Chernobyl had a nuclear explosion, and many people realize the Chernobyl incident led to a release of large, widespread amounts of toxic radiation, and we have no way of actually containing this material. So whenever nuclear actions such as this occur, there's no option other than to bury this toxic material under the ground. This is certainly not a choice that will lead to greater preservation of our natural environment. Now that I've presented the problem and a potential solution, let me try explaining to you what we face if we don't take action now, as well as if we do. So I propose we develop a support for renewable alternative energy sources in place of the fossil fuels. I propose we accept the preventative costs and accept them and realize that in the future we could face zero fuel costs and we could obtain the energy that we need at a reduced cost and at a reduced impact to our environment. Imagine we hand down our world to our children, a world reliant upon an energy source that we have first depleted. We as Americans would be in a state of panic. Imagine you go to the gas station and you can't get any gas. Imagine you can't actually afford to get your food and you can't keep your food cold enough to actually, or cook your food to, actually get it to a temperature that's safe to eat. Worldwide famine and poverty would ensure. It's a problem at a level of need we can barely anticipate. Now imagine we live in a world where our homes, our businesses, and our day-to-day conveniences are powered by the sun and our wind. The impact on our environment will dramatically decrease. Wars will not be fought that are fought. Our social and economic burdens arising from the burning of fossil fuels will all be slowly addressed. I would like to conclude by saying that fossil fuels are a major method of energy obtainment, yet they are being rapidly depleted. Furthermore, they cause many problems in our society, and our only potential solution is development of renewable energy. Do not dismiss renewable energy as impractical and unworthy of future development. However, I suggest that you realize that it is our only solution eventually to energy sustainability in a world where fossil fuels are depleted. Educate yourselves on the need for fossil fuels and the particular benefits that they offer to us. Support alternative energies and energy conservation. You can even buy more energy conservative household appliances and light bulbs. Small steps like this, though they may seem small, can eventually lead to large gains. I plan to continue to develop and educate myself on our needs and to develop an interest in the state of our renewable energy development. And perhaps someday I will address these issues with my work as a chemical engineer. Next time you get in your cars and you drive home to an air-conditioned house or an apartment and you cook yourself a meal, remember that the energy you used is precious and was not obtained freely, and that someday this energy will not be available if we don't come up with an alternative method of development.